When we talk about social media in long-distance relationships, we often begin with gratitude. It allows us to see each other's faces, share moments instantly, react in real time. We can send photos, voice notes, videos. We can witness daily life across continents. It feels like connection. But visibility is not the same as intimacy. Social media gives us access to each other's curated worlds. We see the highlights, the filtered moments, the captions crafted for public consumption. We can like, comment, react with emojis, and these micro-interactions create a steady hum of contact. Yet intimacy is not built on observation, it is built on revelation. There is a psychological difference between knowing what someone is doing and knowing how they are feeling. When you scroll through your partner's day, you may feel informed. You saw the dinner they had, the friends they met, the event they attended. But information is not the same as emotional access. In fact, sometimes constant visibility can replace the deeper conversation. Instead of asking, "How was dinner? What did it mean to you? Did anything surprise you?" we think, "I saw it already." Social media can create an illusion of being up to date while remaining emotionally distant. This is where the line between curated connection and authentic intimacy becomes important. Curated connection is performative by nature. Even when we are not consciously performing, we are selecting. We choose the flattering photo, the witty caption, the moment that reflects well on us. We rarely post our confusion, our insecurity, our longing. So if your primary window into your partner's life is their public feed, you are engaging with a version of them designed for an audience, not necessarily for you. And here's the paradox. You may feel close because you are constantly updated, yet feel strangely disconnected because the deeper layers are absent. True intimacy requires private language. It requires the unfiltered story behind the image. What you didn't see in that photo is that I felt out of place. I looked happy in that post, but I was actually exhausted. I smiled for the camera, but I missed you. Without these conversations, social media can subtly shift the relationship into performance mode. You start posting not only to share, but to signal loyalty, to signal happiness, to signal that the relationship is strong. And when love becomes something that must be displayed, it risks losing its private depth. This is particularly sensitive in long-distance relationships, where visibility can feel like reassurance. If they post about me, it means I matter. If they comment publicly, it means they're proud. If they don't, maybe something is wrong. Notice how quickly validation becomes externalized. Instead of grounding security in direct communication, it becomes tied to public acknowledgement. And public acknowledgement is unstable. It is influenced by algorithms, moods, social context, even strategy. If your sense of connection rises and falls based on digital gestures, anxiety is never far behind. There is also the question of comparison. On social media, we are constantly exposed to other couples, their vacations, their reunions, their anniversary posts. And in long-distance relationships, this comparison can sting. You may see couples physically together and feel deprived. You may see dramatic romantic gestures and question whether yours measures up. But social media rarely shows the full complexity of any relationship. It shows moments, not dynamics, smiles, not conflicts, milestones, not maintenance. When you compare your daily reality to someone else's highlight reel, dissatisfaction can grow unfairly. The solution is not withdrawal from technology, but discernment. Ask yourself, are we using social media to deepen conversation or to avoid it? Are we sharing publicly what we struggle to say privately? Are we measuring intimacy by engagement metrics instead of emotional depth? Technology is a tool. It can amplify closeness or mask distance. The difference lies in intention. If you see a post your partner shared, let it become a doorway rather than a substitute. Ask about it, explore it, invite the story behind it. If you share something publicly, also share something privately. Let the public expression be complemented by a deeper, direct connection. And most importantly, guard the sacredness of what belongs only to the two of you. Not every tender exchange needs an audience. Not every milestone needs validation. Some intimacy strengthens precisely because it is protected. So as you navigate social media in a long-distance relationship, remember this. Visibility can create familiarity, but vulnerability creates closeness. Do not confuse being updated with being understood, because in the end, love is not measured by how often it appears on a screen. It is measured by how deeply it is felt when no one else is watching. If curated visibility can create the illusion of closeness, the darker side of social media in long-distance relationships is surveillance. What begins as connection can quietly morph into monitoring. You check when they were last active, you notice who liked their photo, you scan comments for unfamiliar names, you replay stories to see who else appeared in the background. You interpret emojis, you analyze timing, and suddenly, instead of feeling closer, you feel anxious. Social media gives us unprecedented access to each other's digital footprints. In proximity, you might not know every interaction your partner has throughout the day. But online, interactions are visible, time-stamped, public. This visibility can soothe uncertainty. Briefly, if I can see what they're doing, I feel secure. But the relief is fragile, because visibility also invites interpretation. Why didn't they respond to my message but posted a story? Who is that person commenting with a heart emoji? Why didn't they mention going out, but I see them tagged at a bar? In long-distance relationships, where physical reassurance is absent, ambiguity can feel amplified, and social media multiplies ambiguous cues. The human mind is wired to fill gaps in information. When we don't have context, we create narrative. Often those narratives are shaped by our attachment patterns rather than by evidence. If you lean anxious, social media becomes a minefield. Every delay feels personal. Every new interaction feels threatening. The platform becomes a magnifying glass for insecurity. If you lean avoidant, you may use social media to create distance, engaging publicly while withdrawing privately. Posting becomes easier than direct vulnerability. In both cases, technology intensifies existing patterns. Surveillance masquerades as reassurance, but true reassurance cannot be obtained through monitoring. You cannot scroll your way into trust. Trust is not built by tracking someone's digital behavior. It is built by direct communication and consistent integrity. When social media becomes a tool of surveillance, something shifts in the relational dynamic. You move from partnership to policing, and policing erodes intimacy, because intimacy requires freedom. It requires the sense that you are chosen, not managed. There is also a subtle psychological toll in constant monitoring. Hypervigilance is exhausting. Your nervous system remains alert, scanning for potential threats. Instead of experiencing connection, you experience anticipation of betrayal. Even neutral information begins to feel charged. A like becomes a statement, a delayed response becomes rejection, a new follower becomes competition. This is not because social media is inherently destructive, it is because digital cues lack emotional tone, they are stripped of context. In physical proximity, you might notice your partner's body language, hear their tone, sense their mood. Online, you are left with fragments, and fragments are easily misinterpreted. The question then becomes, are you using social media to connect or to control uncertainty? Uncertainty is uncomfortable, especially at a distance. You cannot spontaneously drop by. You cannot visually confirm reassurance. You must tolerate not knowing every detail. Emotional maturity in long-distance relationships requires learning to sit with that discomfort without defaulting to surveillance. This does not mean ignoring red flags. It means distinguishing between intuition and insecurity. Intuition is grounded, steady, consistent. Insecurity is reactive, fluctuating, fueled by imagination. When you feel anxious after seeing something online, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, what story am I telling? Do I have evidence? Have I asked directly? Direct communication is vulnerable. Surveillance feels safer because it avoids confrontation, but safety built on avoidance is fragile. If something unsettles you, bring it into the open calmly. I noticed I felt a little insecure when I saw that post. Can we talk about it? This approach invites dialogue rather than accusation. It also shifts the focus from their behavior to your experience. Because ultimately, social media does not create insecurity, it reveals it. And revelation can be an opportunity. an opportunity to strengthen trust through conversation rather than through control, an opportunity to understand each other's boundaries, an opportunity to clarify expectations around digital behavior. For example, what does flirting online mean to each of you? What feels respectful? What feels uncomfortable? How public should your relationship be? Without explicit agreements, assumptions take over, and assumptions are dangerous in a digital world. The goal is not to eliminate access, but to reduce interpretation. When trust is strong, social media becomes background noise. When trust is fragile, it becomes a battlefield. So I would ask you, when you open an app to check on your partner, what are you really seeking? Reassurance? Proof? Control? And is that need something that could be met more directly? Through a conversation? Through clarity? Through strengthening your own internal security? Because love cannot thrive under surveillance. It thrives under trust. And trust is not built by watching someone constantly. It is built by believing them and allowing them the freedom to choose you without being monitored. If social media becomes your primary source of certainty, the relationship will always feel unstable. But if communication becomes your primary source of security, technology becomes secondary. And in a world of constant visibility, the most intimate act may simply be this: choosing trust over tracking. And now we arrive at the final tension point in this conversation about social media and long-distance identity. Because in a hyper-connected world, the line between who we are privately and who we are publicly becomes increasingly blurred. In long-distance relationships, this blur can either strengthen trust or quietly erode it. Social media invites performance. It rewards visibility, wit, beauty, relatability. We curate not only images, but identities. We decide how much of ourselves to reveal, how much to conceal, how we want to be perceived. But a relationship lives in a different realm. Intimacy requires authenticity. It requires the parts of us that are unpolished, uncertain, contradictory. It requires emotional nuance that does not fit into a caption. When your partner primarily interacts with your public persona, something subtle can happen. They may feel connected to your image, but disconnected from your interior. And if you are not careful, you may begin relating to each other through the lens of audience perception. How does our relationship look? Are we visible enough? Do people know we're strong? When external validation begins to influence internal security, intimacy becomes fragile. The strength of a long-distance relationship does not depend on how often it appears online. It depends on how deeply it is grounded offline. Trust, in this context, becomes an act of discipline. Not blind trust, not naive trust, but conscious trust. Conscious trust means deciding not to interpret every digital interaction as a relational statement. It means resisting the urge to compare your bond to curated couples online. It means protecting your relationship from the noise of commentary, likes, and subtle social hierarchies. Comparison culture is relentless. You see reunions filmed in slow motion. You see grand gestures. You see dramatic countdowns and airport embraces. And while these moments are real, they are fragments. No one posts the argument about scheduling, the quiet loneliness on a Tuesday night, the difficult conversation about boundaries. If you measure your relationship against curated extremes, dissatisfaction will quietly grow. But beyond comparison lies another challenge: maintaining individual identity without threatening connection. When your partner is active online, engaging, networking, building friendships, how do you respond internally? Do you celebrate their world expanding, or do you feel displaced? In long-distance relationships, autonomy is not optional, it is inevitable. You will live separate daily lives. You will build routines that do not include each other physically. The question is whether you can hold that autonomy without interpreting it as emotional drift. If your sense of security depends on being central in every aspect of your partner's visible world, social media will amplify insecurity. But if your security is rooted in direct communication, shared values, and mutual commitment, social media becomes contextual rather than threatening. Boundaries become essential here. What feels respectful in your digital interactions? What crosses a line? What level of public disclosure feels aligned with your values? These conversations must be explicit. because assumptions in a digital environment are dangerous. One partner may see a playful comment as harmless, the other may experience it as intimate. Without clarity, resentment builds quietly. Trust does not mean absence of boundaries. It means agreements honored consistently. It also means accepting that your partner has an identity beyond you. This can be unsettling, especially when distance already creates vulnerability. But true intimacy is not about merging identities. It is about choosing each other while remaining distinct. And here is the deeper philosophical question. Can you love someone who is visible to the world without feeling diminished? Can you tolerate that others will see them, admire them, interact with them, and still trust that the intimacy you share is unique? Insecure attachment seeks exclusivity of attention. Secure attachment trusts exclusivity of bond. These are not the same. Social media tests this difference daily. When you are grounded in your own identity, when you have your own pursuits, friendships, and sense of self, you are less likely to experience your partner's online presence as a threat. You do not need to shrink their world to feel safe in yours, and that is maturity. In the end, social media is neither inherently help nor harm. It is an amplifier. It amplifies insecurity or confidence, surveillance or trust, performance or authenticity. The decisive factor is not the platform. It is the internal stability of the people using it. So I would leave you with this. Are you building a relationship that depends on public visibility, or one that thrives in private depth? Are you seeking reassurance from the crowd or security from direct connection? Are you protecting your bond from comparison or feeding it with it? Because in a world where everything can be seen, the most powerful form of intimacy may be the part that remains unseen. Guard it, nurture it, choose trust over performance. And remember, love does not need an audience to be real. When you are not waking up next to each other, you can still symbolically wake up together. When you are not cooking in the same kitchen, you can still eat together over video once a week. When you cannot sit side by side watching a film, you can press play at the same time and exchange commentary. These actions may seem small, but repetition transforms them into attachment anchors. The nervous system responds to predictability. When I know that every Sunday evening we talk deeply, that every Wednesday we send each other something we're grateful for, that every month we schedule a longer, uninterrupted call, I relax. I don't have to guess when connection will occur. I don't have to chase it. And that relaxation allows intimacy to deepen. Without rhythm, communication becomes reactive. You text when you're bored. You call when you feel lonely. You send memes to fill silence. There is nothing inherently wrong with spontaneity, but without structure, connection can feel accidental. Intentional digital rituals communicate priority. They say, we are not fitting this relationship into the margins of our lives. We are designing space for it. But there is a subtle distinction that must be honored. Digital rituals should enhance intimacy, not replace effort. It is easy to confuse frequent messaging with depth. You may exchange dozens of texts throughout the day, yet never discuss anything vulnerable. You may send constant updates, but avoid meaningful conversations. Ritual is not about volume, it is about presence. When you have your nightly call, are you truly there? Or are you scrolling simultaneously? Are you multitasking? Is your attention fragmented? Attention is the currency of intimacy. 15 minutes of focused listening can create more closeness than hours of distracted interaction. Digital tools can also create shared experiences beyond conversation. You can read the same book and discuss it chapter by chapter. You can build a shared playlist that evolves over time. You can keep a private digital journal where you both contribute reflections. These shared artifacts become part of your relational memory. They create continuity. They tell the story of us. In long-distance relationships, shared narrative matters deeply. Because you are not accumulating memories in the same physical space, you must consciously create emotional milestones. A screenshot of a meaningful exchange, a saved message you revisit, a countdown to the next reunion. These rituals turn waiting into anticipation rather than emptiness. And anticipation, when managed well, sustains connection. However, digital rituals must be flexible. Life changes. Time zones shift. Schedules evolve. If rituals become rigid obligations rather than chosen commitments, resentment can creep in. The question is not, are we following the exact routine? But are we maintaining intentional connection? If a weekly call must move, is there still reassurance? If a busy period reduces communication temporarily, is there clarity rather than silence? Ritual without communication can become hollow. Communication about ritual keeps it alive. It is also important to periodically evaluate whether your digital habits are serving you. Are your interactions energizing or draining? Do they create warmth or tension? Are you using social media to supplement deeper conversation or to avoid it? Technology amplifies intention. If your intention is closeness, it can facilitate it beautifully. If your intention is distraction or avoidance, it will amplify that too. Ultimately, digital rituals are modern expressions of an ancient human need to feel remembered. When someone consistently reaches toward you, even through a screen, it signals, "You are part of my inner world." But remember, the tool is not the bond, the app is not the attachment, the device is not the devotion. The ritual only holds power because of the meaning you infuse into it. So ask yourself, are you engaging digitally out of habit or out of intention? Are your messages placeholders or are they bridges? Because in a world where connection is always available, intimacy still requires design. And when you transform technology from a passive habit into an active ritual, distance no longer feels like absence. It feels like a space intentionally filled with presence. And that is the difference between scrolling past each other and choosing each other every day.